So, session 2 of Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and it was a great session. My feelings about this campaign are pretty much the same as they were last week, just a little bit more fully formed and crystallized now that we've spent a few more hours in this world. The session itself was super simple. We are continuing to travel through the first levels of the dungeon. It's very twisty, very labyrinthine. There's a lot of monsters here. Lots of misdirections, lots of traps. I think everyone's journey through this upper level is going to be different, so I won't harp too much on play-by-play of exactly which rooms we went to. But if you recall, at the end of the last session, we had just defeated some bugbears that were actually brains and some goblins, and we ended up just outside a room that was marked barracks. Now, this session started, we went into that room and we found a lot of goblins sleeping inside. And there was also our new party member. He is another rogue. Lovely. He is a halfling called Sterling, who is a little bit like Oliver Twist, complete with the braces and the flat cap and the Cockney accent. Consider yourself a mate. Consider yourself part of the family, all that. So obviously we met this person and we made a bit of noise entering the room, woke up the goblins, and so then we had a fight with them all. We killed all of those goblins very easily, except for one, because we had this great idea, we'll keep one of them alive and we'll kind of intimidate him, tie him up, and then we'll essentially use him for the rest of the session as a kind of pet, I guess. I don't think the DM was really expecting this to happen, but fair play to the guy. He just rolled with it, and we ended up creating this character, Billy, out of nowhere, and basically talked a lot like the Dobby, the elf from Harry Potter. And we were kind of using him like, the metaphor I used at the time was we were using him like a canary in the coal mine, sending him into rooms first to see if they were safe. And also because in theory, anyway, he lives down here in the Undermountain, he should have a bit more knowledge about the kind of local area, the environment. And so my thinking was, he could direct us where to go. And then anytime he gave us a direction, we would just do the opposite of what he said and we should be fine, So that was fine. And yeah, spoiler alert, he did die before the end of the session. But I like to think that we made his last few hours of life enjoyable. Interesting, anyway. But yeah, so there were lots of fun shenanigans like this throughout the session, and it was great having Billy with us because the other party members, we all kind of played off Billy. We were kind of threatening him. At one point he lied to us and said that there was nothing inside this alcove that we explored, but actually there was something there, so we removed one of his fingers. We're quite a morally grey party here. And we basically told him, well, that's one finger for every lie you tell us, so that's only a maximum of 10 lies you can tell us, and if you lose all 10 fingers, that's on you. So after we escaped from that goblin-held area, we then went into this other area of the dungeon, which was kind of controlled by vampires. They weren't actually vampires. My character thinks that they are vampires, but they weren't actually vampires. They were just these kind of wannabe emo kids who were kind of cosplaying as vampires, and they were lying around in this kind of opium den of a kind of speakeasy place, just cohabiting it, lying on chaise longue and just listening to music or whatever, and just oh, woe is me, my life is so hard. And, the leader of these vampires, he asked us to go and hunt down his girlfriend, who apparently was a bit of a bitch, and he wants her dead. Fine, we're not going to question that. If you really are a vampire, you could just go and do that yourself, but whatever, he wants us to find her, so we will go and find her and kill her, and he'll be very happy with us for that. Or, alternatively, I guess, we could kill them instead and leave her alive. So I guess we've got a choice now. Quite a morally ambiguous choice as to which way we want to go. Who do we want to be friends with here? Who knows? And actually, at the end of the session, we did manage to find this woman we were tracking down. We went through a few more rooms. She was being protected by a flesh golem, which we took out. Obviously, my character, being a gravedigger, was quite offended by this abomination of a Frankenstein's monster, but we knocked her unconscious, didn't kill her, we just knocked her out, and that's when the session ended, that we had had her unconscious. So now we have to decide which way we're going to go now, and how we want to proceed. But the DM did, very nice on him, he did basically tell us that that was the equivalent of a milestone point in the campaign. So the next time we have a long rest, presumably, we will end up leveling up. So yeah, like I say, really nice, very simple, straightforward campaign so far. There's not a lot of analysis paralysis going on here. There's no like political undercurrents or issues that need to be solved. It's just very simple of us just going room to room to room, clearing out the monsters. There's traps, there's fun stuff had along the way, and yeah, sometimes it's nice just to have a very straightforward way to kill a few hours. But no, I do have some issues with the campaign, but most of those I'm finding are connected to logic. And actually, they're the sorts of problems I have with a lot of DND modules, particularly pre-written ones. I think this is just the kind of person that I am. Just generally, as a rule, I am more than happy to suspend my disbelief. The thing I always come back to is that you need to give me something upon which I can suspend that disbelief. I am more than happy to believe in magic and unicorns and the affirmative power of dreams and anything else you want to fart out at me. Fine, absolutely great, but it needs to be logical and internally consistent. As an example, if you were to give me a door and you said to me, this door can only be traveled through in one direction. Why? Because it's magic. Fine, I would say that's great. But if I later then saw an NPC going the wrong way through that door, well, then obviously, unless they had some sort of magical MacGuffin that enabled them to do this, I would be calling shenanigans. I think that's only fair enough, right? And I always seem to be the one pointing this out at the table. But I hate it. I just absolutely hate it when a room in a dungeon seems to have no purpose whatsoever. You know, we all live in houses. We've all been to castles or old buildings. Yes, there are lots of rooms in our houses. There are lots of rooms in these old buildings, but every room has a purpose, right? Even if it's not being used for that purpose in the here and now, there is a purpose. And yet in dungeons, for some reason in this game, we are more than happy to just have random alcoves and winding corridors and empty rooms that are somehow massive because a combat has to occur in them. So this room is like, in real life, it would be the size of a cathedral. And yet there's like a table and chairs in there, or like a bookcase. And you're like, well, that is ridiculous, you know? Or you have a corridor that goes like 60 feet this way, and then 60 feet this way, and then 60 feet this way. And you just think to yourself, well, why don't you just cut across? You know, really frustrating. So let's take as an example of this. I already mentioned they arrived in this opium den, this speakeasy place with these wannabe vampires, and it was really cool. It was a really great atmosphere. I really liked it. The DM is very, very good at playing NPCs who are just hateable straight away, just very hateable. And these guys were just being very pretentious and oh, woe is me, you know, if it's played like this, and it's great, you know. But at the same time, it made no goddamn sense. Let's remember, we are on the first level of this dungeon. We are only a few rooms into this dungeon. Had we known which way to go from the beginning, had we had a map, for example, we could have got to this speakeasy place in about 5 minutes of walking. And also remember, within this campaign, it is canon that every 3 hours or so, a new batch of wannabe adventurers come down from the pub above into this undermountain to test their luck and to try their strength. So we have these two things that have been established. Fine, I am suspending my disbelief here. That's great. But then, once you've established this, don't then turn around to me and have these wannabe vampires like, who are you? How dare you have found this place? And it's like, who do you think we are? We're just another bunch of adventurers from the world above. Do you not see us all the time down here? And then, more to the point, why are you just sitting around in this room? Where do you get your food from? Where do you go to the toilet? Where do you sleep? There are 3 doors that enter into this room. Why is only one of those doors guarded? That's the one we entered through. How convenient. Where is the foot traffic down here? Hang on a second. There's a dead body in the middle of your room, and there is a staff that screams when you touch it. Has no one thought to do something about this at any point? It doesn't really bother me. You know, obviously, I am just going to have a good time. I will look past it, but I am the sort of person that if I do spot this thing, I will always lampshade it. You know, I will always call it out. And this is particularly true because I am playing this very, like, rough, dirty dwarf, if you remember. I'm just very like, you what? What are you talking about? Where are you getting your food from? But bless his heart, the DM, he just rolled right along with this stuff, and he was just like, yeah, first rule of improv. Yes, and if someone gives you something, you don't reject it, you just go, yes, and then you build on it. And so he was saying how, yeah, actually there's a supermarket in the Undermountain. Didn't you see it? You must have gone the wrong way out of the entrance. Yeah, if you'd gone the other way, you'd have seen there's an Asda right there. And yeah, we've got loyalty cards there because they got a great, like, milkshake machine. So, you know, if you'd gone that way, you would have seen that there's an Asda. That's where we go. That's where we get out. We make little food runs. I accepted that answer, and it turns out that, long story short, apparently my character really loves chocolate milkshakes. Now, who would have thought it? So, and actually, in the end, he only agreed to help this group of wannabe vampires because he was promised that he would get his very own Asda loyalty card, which is only one stamp away from getting a free coffee. He's surprisingly pleased about this, you know. He loves a good bargain, let's put it that way. Like I say, maybe there is a good reason for all of this. I have been assured that on the monster front, apparently, there is a very good reason why there are lots of different monsters just running loose in the dungeon. Apparently it's a very funny reason as well, so I will wait to cast judgment on that. And as for the nonsensical layout of this labyrinth, well, let's just remember it was built by a mad mage. You know, the explanation is in the title. He is mad. So again, I will reserve judgment there. You know, a wizard did it, and he is insane. Okay, fine. But these random bandits pretending to be vampires, lying around in a room with no food and no obvious way in or out, and yet if you question them about what's going on around them in the dungeon, they know jack shit. You know, they were like 3 rooms away. They were like just a couple of 100 feet away from a whole bunch of goblins and bugbears, and yet the 2 groups seem to know nothing about each other. Sorry, that's bullshit. Let's be logical here. Let's suspend our disbelief properly. We have now established that in this Undermountain, here we have an army of goblins, and here you have this group of wannabe vampire bandits. And if we were doing this in real life, you would say these 2 groups should be fully cognizant about each other's existence, and eventually you would get a literal line drawn between their territories. You would find each of them sending sorties into each other's territory, into no man's land. The space, the corridor between which connects their territory together, there would be traps all down it that connects them. And then, of course, the party would go down that corridor and they'd stumble through all of these traps. Why are all these traps here? And that would make sense. It would be logical. And I would have loved that. But no. Instead, we have some guards standing at the door saying, "Who are you? Why are you here? Where did you come from?" And apparently the goblin that we have with us that is leading the way, he's heard that there are vampires, but he doesn't really know much about them. I'm sorry. No. That's nonsense. Now, I'm fully aware this is probably one of those things that it doesn't bother most people. It does bother me. And it's one of those things that when I do my own DMing, I always kind of try and face into it. And anyone watching this video that's played through one of my campaigns, if they cast their mind back, they should be able to verify this, that any dungeon that I've created, I always try and make sure that every room in the dungeon has a purpose. I always try to make sure that there's a logical consistency for why things are the way they are. This door is trapped. Why would that be the case? This chest is trapped. Why would that be the case? This magical item is here. Why is that magical item here? Why is this monster here? Oh, look, we've entered a room. There's this giant wyvern in the room. This actually happened. Sorry, I forgot to mention. At the end, we enter this room. There's a giant wyvern skeleton. The skeleton takes up about 2/3 of the room. There's like 4 doors that lead into this room. The doors are all smaller than the wyvern. How did the wyvern fit through the doors to get into this room? Where did it come from? What was it doing while it was alive, presumably? Did it eat anything? Where did its food come from? All of these things. So I always try and make sure that there are answers for those questions when I do things, because otherwise it annoys me. Little things like, where do the guards go to the toilet? Where do they sleep? Are there any fire escapes? How do the guards get trained? How do they get recruited? Why is this monster here? How do they keep it under control? You know, I try and make sure that there's logical explanations for everything, because then we can all suspend our disbelief. We can roll some dice, we can have some fun. Stress free. Now, I'm aware that not everyone thinks this way. I'm fully aware that it's a me problem, but you know, let's just say for now, I'm going to content myself with calling it out every single time I see it and saying, that's bullshit. And it's particularly annoying because other than these weird, illogical inconsistencies, the actual dungeon itself is really, really good. It's very well designed. As I said, it's a great campaign. You know, I love how twisty and windy the routes are. You know, you get to a fork in the road, but then if you loop around, you find yourself back to where you started originally. You know, you find yourself in the same room, and it's great. And there are no wrong moves that you can make, really. And a couple of things spring to mind for me on this one. So very early on, last session, we were traveling through a room with lots of like demon paintings on the wall, demon frescoes, and one of them ended up being a fake door that when we pushed on, we were able to find a secret passageway, and we explored that area. We came back, and afterwards I deliberately told the DM I want to be pushing on all of the other paintings to see if there's any other false doors. I investigated, and it turned out that there weren't. But later, after we'd looped around, gone through all the other rooms, come back, we actually found that one of the paintings had eye holes drilled into it, which I had not spotted at the time because I was just pushing on the paintings. And when you look through the eye holes, you can see the corridor that we were walking through from the other side. And that immediately brings to mind questions like, well, why are those eye holes there? Who was looking through them? Very, very interesting, and it kind of makes your mind kind of spin. Another example was, again, last session, we had a warning sign saying something like, danger lies beyond the forest of mirrors, or something like this. It meant nothing to us because we ended up going a different direction rather than going straight. We ended up going around. But later we looped around and we came back to the forest of mirrors from the top. But by this point, we've completely forgotten about the warning. So we just blindly wandered into this forest of mirrors, getting attacked by a bunch of shadows. And, you know, afterwards we rolled an intelligence check and we were like, oh yeah, we were warned about that. So that's on us. So I love this, you know, because as I said earlier, it means there's no such thing as a wrong choice. You know, analysis paralysis is not a thing because no matter which way you go, there's going to be an interesting experience for you. Like, for example, let's imagine that last session, I had actually managed to find those eye holes from the other side of the room. Well, it wouldn't have spoiled anything. It just would have been a different experience because then I would have been like, oh, well, let's break down this wall. I would have discovered that there was a room behind it. I would have felt really intelligent. And then we would have ended up in the speakeasy with the vampires a little bit earlier and maybe not have got to the goblins at all. That's all fine. Every direction is the right one, and ultimately the only way forwards in this dungeon is to go down, and I like that. It's good. Yeah, and I also really, really like how many completely useless magical items there are in this dungeon. You know, this place is stocked to the rafters with useless magical stuff, which just makes sense. You know, this upper level probably has been kind of kicked clean by this point. It's very well traveled. There's lots of sentient creatures living here. It makes sense that the only stuff that remains here lying around now is basically useless. We found a staff that screams when you touch it. We found a sword that's cursed, so you literally can't put it down when you pick it up. Our rogue picked that up. I found a magical potion that makes you invisible when you drink it. Only to goblins. All of these sorts of things, I like it. I think more magical items in this game should have drawbacks. There should be a cost for doing something game-changing. I am, however, starting to think that maybe I shouldn't have taken Gorn as my character. I am finding he's a little bit one note, shall we say. He's just grumpy. He just hates everything. There's no backstory here. There's no backstory to any of our characters. We're all just basically playing one-shot characters that have just been dropped into this situation. We're making little bits and pieces where we can, we've established now that my guy is scared of water. We've established that he hates people. He particularly hates the desecration of dead bodies, he thinks the dead should belong in the ground. We've also found that he really likes chocolate milkshakes. He loves getting a good deal on things like the Asda loyalty card. He's one for a bargain. Maybe it's one of those cases where the longer we play, the more a kind of character will emerge over time as this fully rounded person. But I don't know, as things stand at the moment, he's fun to play. That's the main thing. And he does provide balance for the party. At this stage, he is basically the muscle of the party. He's the only martial class. We've got 2 rogues, a wizard, and a ranger. So I am doing a lot of the high AC, in-your-face, melee attacking stuff. I'm also the only high wisdom character in the party as well. I might ask the DM maybe if I can move around a couple of my proficiencies to take advantage of that, so that we've got people in the party that are able to cover all of the major ability roles. I also really like that I was able to get DM inspiration at one point during the session. The wizard in the party, we were exchanging knowledge that we had of this place, and the DM mentioned something about a lich, and Gorn doesn't know what a lich is. He's never heard of one before, and I responded. I said, "Do you mean lichen?" It's actually pronounced lichen. You get a lot of it in gravestones, and the DM really liked that, and he gave me inspiration for it. Yeah. So yeah, as I say, slowly building up a well-rounded character, but I don't know. I feel I just want to play Helix. I spent so long creating that guy and his backstory. I really want to actually play him. One day. But yeah, for now, I think don't let my 10-minute long rant against logical absurdities distract you from the fact that it was a great session. We're all having a really great time. We're all really enjoying ourselves. We're laughing a lot at the table, and we're cracking a lot of jokes. But the great thing is, it's not jokes at the expense of the DM or the world, except for when I'm lampshading things. It's jokes where we're just kind of having fun together, having fun with Billy, and having fun with each other. And I don't know, it's we can be silly, but we're being silly together, and that's nice. I like it when that happens. I think when people aren't having fun sometimes at the table, there is a tendency to be a bit mean-spirited sometimes, and kind of poking fun at the DM's expense. There's none of this right now, so I'm liking it a lot. It's very fresh, it's very free. We're just having fun, and yeah, I'm just going to see what happens. Unfortunately, I'm actually going to be away for the next 2 weeks because I'm going on holiday. It is the summer, believe it or not, despite the weather. So yeah, we'll see where things stand when I get back, and if the party is still alive after they lose their muscle for 2 weeks. But for now, yeah, going pretty well. So thank you.